Peace, y'all. It is I, the Emma, Energy Master Allah, and you are watching The Leopard in the Mirror, Canticle of the Mutant Guardian. Book available on Amazon. If you don't have that, go ahead and grab that. It's episode 13, and we are moving out of the serious projection section, and we are moving into the supreme calculus. As always, I record these live on Facebook first, then I upload them to YouTube. So if you are watching on YouTube, go ahead, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and we're going to keep it moving. All right. So after the Syrian projection section, it has instructions for how to assemble the projector. I'm not going to go through that. There might be like a little side video I may do one day where I actually build one of these and demonstrate it. That might not be a live video. That might be something that I, put together ahead of time, because that can be very time intensive. But basically, you're just taking those letters. So you got you're taking the letters, putting them, you're assembling them, because you got to make the image first, of course. You got to make them rotations and those overlays that I talked about in the chapter. Then you get something like that when you overlay those. And then you flip them, you mirror it, and then that thing comes out. And you got to flip it one more time. And then the mouth closes. Then you use both of those frames to make a GIF. About 0.15 to 0.2 seconds each. And it will make this guy right here. Little flip book has some talking. Got some Volta talking. Got your Elk Man talking. Alright. So that should be the outcome if you did it correctly. Alright, and then after that, you'll take a regular old CD case, and then you're gonna cut out. I got a little template inside the book, like that. So you'll be cutting out these little trapezoids like this. You can make it bigger. Like I made mine bigger when I did it, but then that's good right there. If you can get them that size right there, that is fine. And you will assemble them. You can use glue or tape or whatever. You don't want anything obstructing the clarity of the little pyramid there. Then you would play your GIF on your phone screen, and you would place your little pyramid in the center there, and then you'll see a projection. It'll be like a little 3D projection. Every time I do it, it reminds me of the little Princess Leia hologram that's on the first Star Wars movie, New Hope. And let's see. So I will read through this interpretive integration. Let's see what it says. The pyramid corresponds to the construct, the vessel through which consciousness folds light into form based on the mind's interpretation of observed vibrations according to semantic experiential programming. The four reflections represent the four phase states of humanity that combine to generate the perfected Akh form of our collective existence on Earth. The mouth opening and closing is the oscillation between being and becoming, the word speaking itself into physical manifestation. Observing it meditatively reenacts the OBE operator in microcosm, of self-witnessing its own projection. Aberashit, purposefully crossing over, and Abarashith, roar plus the gift of God, or Rudra and Inani, Sirius plus a willed body. This is the holographic reconstruction of the memory of the universe's creation. reconstructed from 2D skin marks into 3D resonant fields experienced as worlds by our consciousness. Oh, okay, yeah. That's pretty sexy. That's a good way to end that. Okay, so the supreme calculus. So you should know by now, if you fooling with me, what the supreme wisdom lessons are, as taught to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad by his mentor, Wallace Fard Muhammad. Then you have the supreme mathematics developed by Allah, by the Father. He also provided the supreme alphabet. All right, so this gives you numbers 1 through 9 and 0. When you apply these to the 26 elements of the supreme alphabet, that gives you a total of 36 points of information that are arranged at a 26 to 10 relationship with one another, which is 13 to 5. All right. And these data points correspond, and they're like, so it shows you the behavior of the numbers once you move past the first 9 or whatever. How does 1 and cipher interact? How does 1 interact with itself? How does 1 and 2 interact? So all of that beyond the mathematics itself is showing you how it shows and grows. Okay, so while the mathematics gets you through the first 10, so you can match those 1 to 10 with A through J. The remaining 16, so 11 through 26, so we got a 10, 16, okay, and that gives you K through Z, all right, so 16 over 10 is equal to 8 over 5, which is equal to 1.6, which is 5. And that is the proportions of your body divided at the navel. 8, 5, or 10, or 16 to 10. All right. So this is a breakdown of your very being. You have 36 vital points. If you're a Wu-Tang fan, you should know that very well, the 36 chambers. All right. And so this is what they are, the mathematics and the alphabet. So supreme wisdom lessons, once you understand the body, this is how you walk through the pyramid. The supreme wisdom lessons are actually related to the, not just the structure of the physical pyramid, but the time and space that it encodes. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad always taught that in order to fully understand the supreme wisdom lessons, you had to understand the dimensions of the pyramid, because this is not about speculation. It is not about opinion. It is about mathematical certainty. And so, so in order to fully understand time and the way that things change over time, the type of math that you do that with is calculus. And so hence I have coined the term supreme calculus. All right. So it tells you about change over time at a particular rate. And here's the bar that I managed to intuit based on Elijah Muhammad's statement. Oh, I don't want to be on this side. I want to be on the Wiktionary. So you know, I go to Wiktionary a lot, so we can see what the etymology is of words, the origin, the roots of them. Calculus, aside from being that class that half of y'all failed in high school, Let's see. It is borrowed from Latin calculus, a pebble or stone used as reckoning counters in an abacus. An abacus is like the old school calculator. It is derived from calx, which means limestone, game counter, chalk. It is also related possibly to Sanskrit, katakata, limestone and bone. So they relate bone, limestone. Because they're calcium, that's where their calculus is coming from. And do you know what is made out of limestone? Great Pyramid. Made mostly materials that are made from the shells of the sea animals. That's what them sands were made of. And then bone, you know what's made out of bone? The Shango bone. One of the oldest examples of advanced math, 20 to 25,000 years ago. You know what the Shango bone and the Great Pyramid have in common? The egg. So these were the pygmies that the Egyptians in the Old Kingdom, they report having interacted with in the center of Africa. So they would send people down there to pick up these pygmies so they can come up there to Egypt and do their dance of the gods. They lived in the land of the gods, according to them, which was considered near the equator. All right. And so the Shango bone, as I've demonstrated several times in the past, it is actually an alphanumeric language translation key that talks about essentially how we, the black people, are fragments of the whole. So the idea of, like I was talking about in the reading of this construct, I suspected very early on when I was learning out of body experience training that we weren't actually going out anywhere. We were actually going into our body. So the entire universe is essentially built like a body. Whose body, you ask? Allah. And so it's not something that is outside of us. It's a fractal, almost toroidal type of relationship where the further you go out, the further you going in. And then you can confirm that with the notions of, all right, so if you went out so far that you went past the edge of the universe, you'd essentially be the exact same place that you'd be if you got so small that you could pass between your atoms. It's space outside of the matter. So it's not really a space. It's more like a womb, if anything, like a super fluid. And so when you hear the story, which I actually should have pulled up, let me see. Because I asked the question earlier, like I know a little bit of the story, but I wanted to see how NOY described how Allah made himself, because that's how the story goes. You got several stories, like it talks about a tomb as the self-made one. You got these different stories, and then let's talk about how that happens. So it says, according to NOY, the universe began in darkness 76 trillion years ago. The first supreme being, a mortal black man referred to as Allah, willed himself into existence over 6 million years. This first Allah then used his supreme mind and scientific power to create the sun, the planets, and subsequent generations of black guys and people. Now that sounds like a heck of a claim, but the more details you get on it, how they talk about how the first atom, the first spark of existence, how it came to be, when you get into the stuff about the cosmic egg type of situation and all of that, it perfectly mirrors everything that scientists essentially came to understand about the way that the universe formed, from a singularity into basically a ball of uniform plasma that it then differentiated itself. So Allah did not come out of nowhere and then go into some space outside of what he folded into himself. And that is exactly what you do in the womb. When you are just starting out as a cell, you go through the gastrulation stage and become a blastocyst, and you are essentially the shape of a toroid, like a donut type of thing. That's how you get a mouth and a butthole. You start off as a donut, a little baby donut, before you start spreading out and, you know, multiplying your cells. But the process, in fact, something I discovered not too long before I hopped on here, as a matter of fact. But you know what? Maybe I should show y'all that. Yeah, you know what? Before I get into this math of the supreme calculus, I'm going to show y'all a video. Something I came across last night. And I'm going to clear it up a little bit, because they, you know how it is. We always want to say somebody stole something, or somebody, you know, did whatever. But then sometimes it's a little more complex than that, because we have been around this planet multiple times. Each civilization, we spread out and we make it to the west, and then we cross back into Africa, and then we go back around again and again. So all this which came first is pretty much irrelevant, because it is just one people going through cycles. All right. Let me see, what was it? So it was, how did they do it? Let's see, Wakanda in America or something like this. Let me see if I can find the one. Where is it? It says some girl, and then a dude did a longer version of it. Let's see, there's somebody, so Kura Mayo, he did one. You know, I've chatted with him before. I don't know what his take is on it, but it looks like he's talking about the same sort of thing. Let me look at how he did a whole hour on it. I'm gonna look that back up, but I just wanted the 3-minute one. It's a 3-minute one. Okay, there's the one that the girl did, and then there's another one that was an extension of that. It had a little more info. Oh, here it is. That's the exact one. There it is. Okay, I'll let you hear this, and then I'll explain a little bit more about it, but it isn't totally wrong, but it's some details in there that's a little off, because, you know, as somebody who studies this particular situation.
Buy one Blizzard treat and get a second for just 99 cents. Get it in the DQ app.
Hey, have you been researching dental implants? Did you know you can now get permanent teeth in just 24 hours? With most traditional dental offices, you may be waiting up to
Did you know Wakanda is actually rooted in the Americas? There's a lot to unpack here, but let's start with the fact that there is no place in Africa called Wakanda, but there are multiple places in the Americas with that name. Linguistically, the word Wakanda translates to the Great Spirit in the Siouan language. The Omaha, Potawatomi, Ponca, Quapaw, Osage, Oto, Kansa, Missouri, and Iowa tribes refer to the higher power as Wakanda, Wakantanka, or Taku Wakan. In indigenous American culture, Wakanda is the supernatural force that permeates the universe.
Now, this immediately caught my attention, because when most of us hear the word Wakanda, we automatically associate it with Marvel, Black Panther, and Africa. But what she's pointing out is that versions of this word existed in indigenous American cultures long before Marvel ever created its fictional Wakanda. So I wanted to hear where she was going with this.
In South America, a waka is a sacred object, typically a monument associated with veneration and ritual, such as Waka de Luna, Temple of the Moon, located in Peru and constructed between the 1st and 8th centuries. For the Incas, a waka is also used to refer to a sacred ritual or object. El Peru, originally known as Waka, is an ancient Mayan site that was occupied between 500 BC to 800 AD. Again, Waka refers to a sacred place.
And here's what's crazy. I remember hearing the word Wakanda in Killers of the Flower Moon. The Osage were using Wakanda in reference to God or the Great Spirit. At the time, most people probably heard that word and immediately thought about Black Panther. But now hearing her break this down, that scene hits completely different. This wasn't something Marvel invented out of thin air. The word was already being used in indigenous American spiritual traditions.
In Kansas, there is Wakanda Lake, which was originally referred to as Wakanda Springs before the United States flooded it out in 1967. The springs sat on top of a pyramid, or mounds, and had very powerful healing properties, hence indigenous people naming it Wakanda. There's also a town called Wakanda in South Dakota that belonged to the Lakota people prior to United States settlement. In Wisconsin, there's Wakanda Park Mounds, a large cluster of mounds that was submerged when the United States created Lake Menomin. By the way, they flooded the site after they excavated the area and found burials, amongst other artifacts. There seems to be a pattern of flooding out Wakas. Why is that? Alabama also had its own Wakanda 800 years before Marvel created their fabricated version. Keep in mind, Marvel just put Wakanda in its Fantastic Four series July of 1966, after it's already been in indigenous American culture for thousands of years. Another interesting detail is that Marvel released Black Panther the comic in 1966, 1 year after the Black Panther Party was founded.
What y'all think about this?
All right, so quick correction. The Black Panther Party was founded 3 months after that. So July 66. Black Panther comic drops October 66. Black Panther Party is established. Because of the Black Panther Party being established, they didn't they didn't want to take away from the movement, so they temporarily referred to the character as the Black Leopard. So yeah, so these are angry woke niggas, not necessarily comic book fans. And I'll straighten up a couple other things about it. There's another discrepancy in the explanation, as spirited as it may be. This isn't an indictment on them, but you got to have knowledge of self before you got to do the knowledge before you do the wisdom on certain things, or else you're going to mislead the people and cause more confusion. All right, so anyways, there is a Wakanda in Africa. It's called Uganda. If you don't understand how Bantu language works and how G to K shifts work as you move move to the east, G often replaces itself with K. The way Bantu and Proto-Bantu words work is that you have an ending. You have, I forget what the word is for it, but all the words end with a vowel. It's like an open vowel or something like that they call it. And then it has a prefix on it. So Uganda actually comes from Baganda. And then depending on dialect, they have a B and W swap or whatever. So that's Waganda. So that's how you end up with Wakanda. What this is referring to specifically with the Wa prefix is something that, so like you're of or from something. And then Ganda is like, it's kind of like, so it's like the family or house, like the house of a particular, people. But then more importantly, it's an enclosure. And enclosure is also the etymology of garden. So it's the people of the garden. Which garden you have? Garden of Eden. How do we know? Ishango Bone. 60, 48, 60. That's how the notches are arranged on it. That is 12. So one time each solar month. So that reduces to 5, 4, 5. 5 plus 4 plus 5 equals 14. That is EDEN. We wrote that story. Okay, so yes, there is one, but that is an Eden story. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean that they're wrong about the Native American stuff? No. Like I said, it's not that simple. Nobody's off the hook. So what had happened was, so Lakota, and they got the most ridiculous alignments with Egyptian, like it. Oh my goodness, it is ridiculous how many of these words are the same. And they say this all the time about like the mound building. They said in the video that a waka has to do with like a mound and stuff. But depending on whether you talk, so the Lakota is part of the largest Sioux family of languages, and so depending on which dialect you're looking at, like some are doing like prefix stuff just like Bantu language, and some are doing more like suffix stuff, and that's a division that happened, and I'll tell you why in a moment. All right, so like she said, in the context of the Native Americans, when they say Wakanda, they are essentially referring to Wakantanka, the Great Spirit. All right. And there's some nuance to this, and I'll get into it in a minute. And it's another word, Wakanton. Hold on, let me see if I remember how to spell it. So it's something like Wakanton Ka, which means, let's see. So that was the one. So, all right. So there's this thing, and it started, like, you see it with the Nilotic people too, like the Anuak and Shiluk and folk like this. It's basically, they identify you by a combination of your skin color and your character. So it's not enough to have one or the other. Because it's basically saying that as black people, there's certain characteristics that we demonstrate if we're of the same people. So in a lot of ways, you can say it's sort of like how Wakanda is in the film and in the comics, where it's like Wakandans ride for Wakandans. Wakandans got a certain way of speaking. They use Nisabiti, which is the Igbo writing system, which itself means in the beginning or in the head, just like Bereshit, the beginning of Genesis. Hence, the tie back to the Garden of Eden. And they distinguish themselves from outsiders of Wakanda. Now, Marvel, they envisioned this as a physical single location, and whereas it is a nation, so just like how Nation of Islam is different from an Islamic nation. An Islamic nation is a nation that adopts the religion of Islam as its like national religion, and you have to conform to that. Whereas a Nation of Islam is basically the mobile version where you adapt Islam to your specific place. So in other words, you've got several locations, all these different places that you see these wakas and these temples and whatever popping up. They are all doing a form of Islam. Why? Because the word Islam, aside from the acronym I, Self, Lord, and Master, how do you display that you are your own master? You're at peace. That's where Islam comes from. Peace comes from to fasten or to join. And that is where we get the word yoga. So yoga is essentially the same spirit as Islam in regards to bringing that together. But how do you do that? How do you establish that peace? They give you the other hint in the supreme alphabet. Islam equals mathematics. And mathematics is I, Self, Lord, and Master. Why? Because nobody ever went to war over 1 + 2 = 3. Except for Terrence Howard. I was just messing with you. Yeah, but all right, so how do we end up with the Great Spirit over there, but then we get the Panther thing, and that's based on real, African symbolism, because a panther is a melanated leopard. So there's two ways to make a panther, and this is important. So there's two ways to make a black panther. You either have a melanated leopard or you have a melanated jaguar. The difference between the two, this one's in Africa. This one is in Americas. So in South America. It's the exact same system. This is why they went to such great lengths to incorporate Teotihuacan, with that Waka in Teotihuacan being the same Waka as in Wakanda. We're going to call this Uganda/Wakanda. It's just common Bantu language. All right. So the same Waka that's in there is Waka. Notice that what would be Waka in this word comes out to be Uga. Uga is an age or an era in Igbo language. So it's the same thing as Yuga. Yuga and Uga come from the same root as yoga. So Waka is yoga. Why? What does that have? So we established that it has to do with peace. We established that it has to do with fasting. You're connecting what? What are you fasting? To be at peace. You're connecting with the mathematics. If to say that you're connecting with the mathematics, God is the unmanifest quantum aspect of you. So that's the informational part of you. And then you have the physical part of you. Or whatever. So you got the gross physical. So your logic or logos, which is where you get the idea of the word of God, is how you how that math is translated into. So your body is how to put this? Your body walk on top of the Great Spirit. All right, so in Egyptian, great is written like that. But that word for great also happens to mean pillar, like the pillar that connects heaven and earth, holds the heavens up. And it also means like chief, leader, all of this, which bridges to head, origin, beginning, leader. All right. So this is why this is at the root of Pharaoh, which is house. So remember I told you that's what Ganda is. And then this this idea of the great, the head, the leader, Bereshit, Ninsubiri. This is a head leader. The origin, that is the Ori. That is the Chi. All right. So all of these things that could be. All right. So we talked about this Uga and Uganda. So this reconnection with the house. So reconnecting with the family. So what keeps on happening? And we do this over and over and over every 25,000 years, just about. It's a little, the number's a little more specific than that, but that's a talk for another time. What we keep on doing, so you have another instance of that same Egyptian word attached to Mu. So Mu means cat, or it means likeness. All right. And so in Africa, or at least in Proto-Bantu, you'll continue to see words that descend from it. They'll mean cat, or they'll also mean spread or anoint. So the anointed one. Spreading of the likeness. Spreading of the likeness of the originals. So spreading the original. So miwa. So it becomes this story about the great cat of Heliopolis. All right. So in other words, we've got the leader original likeness of Iunu, which means complexion. That's plural, so the W makes it plural. So the original likeness of the complexions. The story is such that Ra, the sun god, becomes the great cat, and he cuts the head off of Apophis, or aka Apep, which is the serpent that tries to swallow him, the darkness that tries to swallow him as he moves through the underworld or the night in order to rise the next day. And so he takes a knife. So the words for cat also tend to mean cut, as in the example of Arabic kata. All right. And then that same semantic gives us Hausa Quata, which has to do with completely, totally, and this is in reference to Kush, so Kashi or Kushi Kata Quata. This is all on the Ishango bone, y'all. I just translated it from numbers to letters because I understood what it was saying for whatever reason. Maybe because I did the knowledge itself. You got to know both parts. You got to know the math and you got to know the alphabet. But anyways, it's talking about you're taking so remember I said bone, so the limestone, that's the pyramid, the calculus, and you are learning to complete the total. This translates also into Kimkes on the other side of the bone, which is the Egyptian. So it shows you that dark, black, and complete are used interchangeably in the ancient world. Kes, we get bone again. So bone / chapter / plot of a story. So you got to get the full story. You can't get the full story without the black bone, the black calculus. All right. And so it's a story of spreading and all of that. Okay, you got to have the whole story. Where is the story contained, you may ask? Well, another word that commonly pops up for cat is Meru. So Meru, I talk about this all the time, Meru, because of M, N, Ung, and I told you about the GK. After you got the common DRLT, and then we talked about the Bantu. So if you understand how these letters shift, you can pretty much predict other words for cat. So Meru, if I intuit Ngeru, that is the Maori word. So way over in the like near Australia almost. That's their word for cat. Eru also appears as like let me see, so Olo, Edu, Udu, Eru, Eru. So because that D roll, you end up getting Udu. Like that. So if you understand how these change, Ungero, that can become Nk, so Nk. So it's like so Wonkantanka, and you see how these N's and K's and these Ungs, and that they're doing the same thing in Lakota. Now, one of the coolest alignments has to do with what they actually do inside of these walkers. And if they are doing waka separate, it's a waka. So if let's say that is a temple. So it's like our house from earlier. Plus undu. So undu. So undu. So same thing. So the undu, undu, untu, di, nri. All of these are roots. So they just spread out differently throughout the continent. This basically means entity of people. We'll go with entity. That's a good way to put it. So you are the entity. You're the waka entity, the being that's in the house. That's what Pharaoh comes from. Pera. What do they speak? They speak Medu. So Medu, Med. That means like word, speech. So house or inn, because that's the semantic that is still attached to bet and Bereshit. So house or inn. We said that this is like the leader. So Resh, aside, it says like the head is the lead, the beginning. And Med is word, so that's actually the logos. So it's logic, it's a logarithm. So in the beginning was the word is actually saying that the entity inside your body is a logarithm. What does a logarithm do? A logarithm basically turns a binary progression, it goes like 2, 4, 8, 16, it doubles. And then it turns that into an ordinal sequence. So that means this is first, second, third, fourth. All right. Why does that matter? Because the other place that Meru is spreading out becomes relevant is, I'm just bringing it back up, Meru Prastara. All right, so anytime you hear about the spreading out of Kusha grass, that is radiation out from Atlantis. You're like, I just dropped that on you just casual as hell, right? All right, so anyway, so Mu. So we got Meru is water. Meru, water course. Or pyramid. So when they're talking about Mu and Lemuria, La is a Lemuria. It's a prefix. Land of Tashamal, if you will, the land of the reeds. They use reeds in this so grass. That's your reeds. Tashamal, that is the name for Kush, or Upper Egypt, if you will, in the Sudan, but it's pretty much Kush. Upper Egypt is associated with Nesut, meaning the sedge. So sedge is a reed. It's a grass. All right, so it's in bed. You just got to know your stuff. All right, so they said been saying this all the time. All right, and so Meru Prastara, if you've been sticking with me and watching for a while, you know. So what about water courses? That's flow. That is fluid dynamics, and you can do fluid dynamics with what white people came thousands of years later and called Pascal's triangle. It's this right here. All right, so I know I'm going to talk about this in the chapter, but I might as well go ahead and cover it. And I've done this in countless other videos, so you should be familiar with this by now. But if not, 7, 21. Now I'm doing our add. So this plus this is this. 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 And then you just bring the ones down. It's like a flow. It's a water course. It's the flow of the separation of the flow. What does this have to do with Wakanda? I'm telling you. This is what we are. This is our nation right here. This is what we have in common. It's just metal. This is how we were able to translate and keep the information consistent each time that we separated, and then we yoga came back together. We re-yoked back to the ox. The ox is the Allah. Back to the original point. Okay, so in the Supreme, so in the teachers, according to Elijah Muhammad, what he was told by Father Muhammad is that, so Allah made himself, we read about that. And so what he did was he then made, so there was a council of 24. So the original Allah gave rise to a council of 24 scientists. If you got the knowledge of self, you're familiar with these 24 sciences. It says from those 24 scientists, there are 12 major and there are 12 minor. From amongst the 12 major scientists, the best knower among them, knower, Nun-Ak, light body. So the best knower from among them, remember that. So matter of fact, let me take a note of that because that's in the Supreme Calculus. So Noah is Nun-Ak. So it's like light or fire body. So light body. That's what happens when the Ka and the Ba come back together. The personality, like the Chi, the Ori, and the Ba, the acting power, the ability to act and the wisdom. So this is when knowledge and wisdom reunite. So essentially what the light body is understanding. All right. So 1, 2, 3. So just keep that in mind. All right. So like I was saying, of the 12, whoever's the best knower, they become Allah. So they become the first. So you got the original from which all the self-created one. So that's like a tomb, basically. After that first one, that's one that is exalted to the status of Allah, similar to what you hear in stories like Adiyogi gaining the status of Shiva, or Shango achieving the status of Jakuta, or Amadioha and Igwe, or Shanidev and Shiva. Even Jesus was a exaltation theology originally. So originally he had to get baptized by John, and then he was had oneness with God. But then later on they made it this whole big cosmic thing of him always having been there. But that's because it's the truth. You've always been God. It's just that you got to get reactivated, reinitiated. That's the whole point of the separation. So you separate and then you reconnect to yourself. You separate and then you reconnect to yourself. You forget and then you remember. Like that's the only way that we learn anything. That's the only way that this experience makes sense. So we have the one that becomes Allah. You got the 11 left over, the other sciences. Then you have the 12 minor ones. And so I noticed, because I know this progression, I was like, oh, that's the first 5 digits of Meru Prostata. And so those digits spell Akab, 1, 11, 1, 2. 1, 11, 1, 2. Which is a Lakota word meaning at the top or above, which is exactly where this is, right? Ain't that wild? Now this is going to blow your mind even more. You bring another A into the fold to get the whole thing, And you get Akaba, which is the Yoruba word for ladder, stairs. So how do you get to the top? You take the ladder, you take the stairs. All right, well, which ladder might that be? All right, so if all you have is this 33, that will connect you to the story of Jacob and Esau. And by virtue of the Terafit Berber word written like this, CC, and it's pronounced sh, or sh, so it's ch or sh. All right, so that gives us Asha, which is the truth in Avestan, or it gives us Eche, or whatever, E-C-H-E. So when you transliterate Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, it's usually as an E, and so Eche means woman, which shows you that it is referring to Eke, the feminine principle that is also in Igbo language. That's a Ghana word, that's Eke. And if it's showing up as woman and showing up in relation to Eke, it is referring to this line right here. So Eke would be plasma. So it's talking about the ionosphere. If I'm not mistaken, see, they say stratosphere. Let me confirm it. Let me confirm that they are not. Like, I don't believe in nothing. I just confirm stuff. I know a lot from actually confirming it. And a lot of this stuff that they are saying in NOI, if you know the math and you know actually understand the lessons, it isn't make-believe stuff. So they got to make you wonder what else they're right about with a lot of stuff. You know, I ain't agreeing with certain rhetoric of specific people or anything like that, or not confirming, denying. But what I am saying is the math is right and exact. Okay, so we were supposed to be looking for, let me see. So Eke, the plasma, we want to make sure that the stratosphere is the stratosphere. And they're talking about some Las Vegas stratosphere. Above the, let's see. All right, so one of them is, so I would think ionosphere would be further out because it would be, because it's a plasma shield, but at the same time, I don't know, let's find out. Is ionosphere above the stratosphere? Yes, it is. All right, so according to them, they are positioned, you know, and this is top down now that I think about it. All right, so the stratosphere is where they say that the mother plane sits with, I forget how many, it's 100, with however many baby planes or whatever. And so they say that all the Tic Tac stuff and the UAP stuff that the government is reporting or whatever, that's who that is. That's essentially us. And these are not some kind of consciousness, foofy type of vehicles. They are just engineered very advancedly, can run on oxygen and hydrogen according to them. And very much within the reach of a civilization that has been around long enough to continue to progress and then learn how to, these people, they are not immortal. They continue their, legacy through their children, just like anybody else. They pass their knowledge down, and then oftentimes will take the same name. So so just like how Osiris is resurrected through his son Heru or Horus. All right, so let me see, stratosphere. Then you got the mesosphere right above that, and then you got the ionosphere and the thermosphere. Out there, that's what the sun hits. That's what thickens during the daytime and whatnot. So it's actually closer to Earth than the ionosphere, which is interesting. But anyway, so we got so you got the truth, you got the 5 Eke. I told you, so this 33 will give you that word that means either usurp or to be hairy. So that's Jacob and Esau. Think black and red, ink versus ochre. Okay, so essentially, to talking about Jacob usurping Esau is actually referring to the red paint that they used to do like the cave painting. So there was a group that was going around and then putting the same type of symbols, like the proportions of the art, baffle the West. But as an artist, I noticed like the golden ratio proportions in the drawings and the sculptures and all of this, and so that's pretty advanced. And so what you're seeing, the symbolic systems that you see in those caves, are actually an advanced civilization that's going around to each one of these locations and then re-educating the next stage of humanity. Because what happens when you have like an ice age or whatever is that people end up getting trapped in isolated in particular areas. So they may be living in the mountains, they may be living in caves and stuff like that. And so the first Atlanteans, and Atlantis is actually called Kusha, so that's where Kush actually gets his name from. It was started by the Lemurians, who lived below the equator, and they were spread out all over. So we had Native Americans, we had Africans, we had all kind of people who were Lemurians, and these were like the first, basically, spirits to cross into physical reality. It's like all those stories about like Eshy dwarves and all of that stuff that you hear. That's the Deneg. So the first of us to cross into physical reality, if you will. And then after they advanced and they went around, it was their time was up. Then you had the Kusha era. So in other words, Kusha starts in Central Africa. Lemurians that were very much in the Americas, so they were in the Pacific. Sundaland got flooded. They moved into the Americas. From the Americas, they came across the Atlantic, the southern part of the Atlantic, which was originally known as the Ethiopian Ocean. Ethiopian simply meaning it has to do with burnt face people or red brown face people, but it's also a reference to everything beneath the equator in Africa. So we came back from the Americas into Central Africa, and there was a new set in the garden. So I told you that the center in Central Africa, near Uganda, near Lake Victoria, all of that, that's the garden. Every time humans pop up, every time a new era of humans comes about, they always pop up near the source of the Nile. It's in the NOI story. It's in, like, when they talk about like the first hominins or whatever, the first modern humans and all that stuff, it always happens in the same place, because we start there, we radiate out, and then once we mature enough and we become advanced enough, we return to that same region, and then we educate the next set of people. And so this is what was happening when the Bantus were connecting with the Pygmies again. So it started out like pygmies for the most part. That's why San people look like little bush people type stuff or whatever. You start out like that, you make it around the world one lap, and then now you the teachers. And so Lemurians, they became Atlanteans / Kushans. So Lemurians become Atlanteans / Kusha people, the grass people. Then this means basically like the spirit. So the great spirit. And then we get to the grass and all that good stuff. Then you get the Meru people, so the cat people. So spirit or sky people. Kusha is your grass, reed generation. And then they make it around, get to the Americas, come back to the west coast of Africa into Ghana, and then that's the Aryan age. That is the Umu Eri of Ani. So you can say Ani of Earth. So Umueri. This is where Aryan comes from. Umu Eri. That's where you end up with Ireland as well. Umu Eri. In Yoruba culture, that ends up becoming Omo Ora, something like that. Omo Ori. Was it Ora or Ori? It might be Ori. I think Ora is son for them. So it's either Ori or Ori. I feel like it's Ori in this case. Because then, so that ends up becoming the children of the head of the beginning of the children of the divine spark, if you will, and so this is where you get more. All right, so Aryan, it had nothing to do originally with some Nazi stuff or whatever, but you did have the group that divided, the E group that went into Africa, and then you end up with the Bantu, and then you had the group that went, up to Europe, and you got your Yamnai, all them, and then of course the ones that were in India. So your Iranians end up becoming your North Indians. All right, so that's how that spread out. So that's basically, like, you see this rapid advance in civilization, and then these taller tribes that are going around and pretty much having babies with everybody, and they're building mounds and all of that. That's what's going on, y'all. It was just the next cycle. So I forget what the next one's supposed to be, but we are still in that same cycle. So guess who is supposed to be heading to Africa to re-educate the next set of people in 11,915 to 16, like around in there, like around 60, we'll say 16 BC. That's when the reset happens. And then we are essentially training now to be the guys that come down and educate the new people. So whoever the guide is at the beginning of an era, they used to be the person that was like the Adam of that era. Every single time. That's what those stories are about. So you got Adam being made in the beginning of the garden, and then you got the reuniting of heaven and earth with Jesus at the end of the Bible. Whatever it's the same being making it to the stage where they're the Elohim that come back in the beginning of Genesis. So it's a circle, it's a cycle. You need the whole thing. It has 66 books because 66 is the abjad, the value of the letters in Allah. Allah is the same, comes from the same root as El. They translate it as the God, which is to make a libation to a spirit eminent in a mouth. That is in Lakota, that is called the NP ceremony or whatever, and they put hot coals, pour water on the hot coals, and then it's supposed to like heat up the skin. It's like you burn that skin, you resist that heat, and then it eventually gives you the state where you can speak with the Great Spirit or whatever. You know where that same story is? It's in Egypt, because NP is Inpu, which is Anubis. Famous story of him working to resurrect Osiris. So that's used the initiate. And then Seth, who was syncretized with Yahweh in Egypt, and they were giving him a donkey head. Donkey is another translation of that same symbol right there that we associate with the leader great. Seth turns into a leopard. A leopard is also a representation of the night sky. So Seth, the chaos, turns into the sky, and then Anubis uses his hot poker to poke the spots. So that's how the leopard gets his spots. So he's basically making the stars. And then he takes that coat, he cuts so we got that cutting theme again. He cuts the skin So he cuts the leopard skin, which is the ba, off of Seth, and he gives it to the Sim priest. So now it is a Simba, and this is where we get the word lion in Swahili. Simba, Simber, symbol. You also get Simbi in like Vodun, which is a water spirit. Remember, we had water having to do with Mu and Meru. Mu and Meru. They are a water spirit that connects a person to the other side, to the spiritual side. So we got that pillar idea again. So you see that it's all the same type of semantics. So the Lakota got the same exact opening of the mouth ceremony. And when you open the mouth, you are receiving the tongue of fire so that you can teach. So now your Simba becomes a Seba. Star, Kochab. So the cycle, the entire procession cycle, the Quran cycle, it begins when Vega is the pole star and the ionosphere is closest to the Earth, which means that it's pushing down into that stratosphere where the mother plane is. And when it is furthest away is when it reaches the star Kochab, whose name just simply means the star. That's what Seba means. And it also means meteorite. It also means gate or doorway. So Babel, the gate of God. Somebody tried to build a tower to try to get up to the stratosphere instead of doing it the right way, like I'm teaching you now. And then the other thing it means is teach. So they relate stars to teaching. So this is what it's talking about, these tongues of fire. So that ends up becoming associated with the letter Lamed in Hebrew, which is the counterpart of Lam, which means benevolent, kind, all of that. And El is, according to Jewish mysticism, El is the first name of God that you end up hearing. So El and Elohim. Eloi is the Most High. So Elyon, Most High. And then Elohim. So Elyon is that one. Elohim is those other 11. All right, so what happens is, so El embodies Chesed, which is loving kindness. I ain't got into none of this math yet, but then it makes a lot more sense if you know this stuff right here. I promise you. All right, so he's loving kindness, but what ends up happening when you got to bring in all, so the all, or king, which is plural, it's like Oku. So you basically have to bring in the Ok. So it's like Ok, Ku, or E, Ku. Ku actually means growl. And then this is the Yoruba word for leopard. But like I told you, that has to do with the sky. And Ku has to, so this Oku is the one who can be thrown. So it gives you like this concept of like the stone thrower. So Sur Yeshuata, rock of my salvation. This is what this all boils back down to. But so the hot stone, the hot coal. So you place in the hot coal and you pouring the water on it to make the steam that burns the skin. So this is all still the Lakota ceremony. And so once this loving kindness intersects with this right here, now it becomes an Elohim, which is the judge. So they're judges, but it's also associated with the word that means pour, to pour. So again, there we go again with pouring that water over the stone. The one who pours, and like to spread, distribute. So the one who distributes the justice, distributes the knowledge, the one who distributes this loving kindness of El, of God, gives you, basically initiates you into reconnection with God, the yoga. So loving, so like loving, beloved, David all comes from that same root. Mary comes from that same root. Love is always defined in reference to desire. Desire as a word comes from de, sedere, meaning from the stars. All right, and then kindness comes from likeness. So you get your likeness from the stars is what it's saying. And that means you're based on the math of this pentagram, the 5-point body. And then we know that to be arm, leg, arm, head. Allah. So Elohim means to be made in the likeness of love. So loving kindness. You are made from a 5-point star design. Leopard. So what you have in common with the sky, the leopard, the way that you are marked, the way that heat distributes in the skin. So that plays into that. Melanin converts UV light from the sun into heat and phonons, which is sound. So you're the judges of the sound. You're the judges that are tempered by the heat. That's what Elohim is. So El and Elohim. So the judges that are sent forth from the origin, the beginning, are the 1 and the 11. Okay, and with that set up, and that's what causes the cascade of the rest of Meru Prasta. So we all had this as a way to encode. I erased the thing before I was done talking about Meru, but then it talks about the leopard and the sky. It talks about the Ifa pot, so Olo or Udu, the pot from which the rainbow comes. It tells you the whole story about Isaac and his twins. It tells you the story of David. It tells you what else is in there. So the bottom, so line 7, line 7 and 8. So they're basically telling you, okay, so the pot, the Ifa pot, this is where Allah was in the beginning, like it was like it was called the negative space, like the womb space or whatever, and then emerges from there. And then the whole concept of the rainbow is it's the current that emits from that, and then once he established electricity and all that within himself, he established conscious thought, and that's how he was able to basically construct himself, construct the universe. It is a frequency. It is a frequency that allows us to do that. And I'm talking about it. I might as well show you real quick. 1 1 1 2 1 1 3 3 1. We already talked about what's going up here. The ladder. That is also Kaaba. So 1 1 1 1 2 1. So that's also Kaaba. So Kaaba is the ladder. All right. So 1 4 6 4 1. That's where you get your 4 6 4. It's 14 4 6 4. So that's the elements of a tetrahedron. 4 points, 4 sides, 6 lines. That is the Wa Din. So Da Wa Din is, it really means like medicine religion, but then it's more to it like that too. But like the rejoining with the Ofu Ovu, so the oneness, so rejoining with the one. It's like the medicine that helps you rejoin with the one. I had to go through a couple languages in my head real quick. But remember, that's the same total as it's Eden. All right. All right, so that's that. And then so we get 1, 5, 10, 10, 5, 1. This is, oh yeah, so that's O. So 15 is O. 10, so that's Yod, Yod. So Yod, Yod is usually Yahweh. So, but then, yeah, so it's either J, J or Y, Y. But that basically means gift or cause. Right here, this Oda. Oh, that's not right. No, okay, I'm just looking at the 51. I just want the 51. So that's EA. So the gift or cause of water, Aya. So keep that in mind. Get here 1, 6, 15, 20, 15, 6, 1. That is, so 16, 15, 20 is P-O-T, pot. It is talking about the Ephah pot. Ephah or Odu. I mean, Ephah Odu is the name of the pot, but then Ephah or Alpha is what I'm talking about. All right, so if we isolate pot, that leaves 15, 6, 1, which is Opha. So you got the Ephah over here and you got the Opha over here. So Opha means bow and arrow. That is, as I told you in the other I equals RV, that is voltage. Pot over here is resistance. Between them, they create a current. All right, so the bow and arrow or shosi shows you the straight line to realization. That shooting of the arrow is a reference to the Torah. So you're going straight to the Ori, the Iri in Egyptian. The pot is referring to the same thing that the Urim and Thummim, the drawing of the lots, the casting of the lots. They're telling you that's what this is. All right, and then once you bring those two together, so remember we associated voltage with 0.61 and we associated alpha with 1.61. The midpoint between those two, so binary code 1-0, switching on and off, leaving behind that 618 the voltage, the potential. The midpoint between there is 1.11, just like at the top. That's your Ka, which is your Ori. And an Orisha is the one that you select, so your selected head, Oriyasher. Orisha is your selected spiritual double, if you will. It is you at the end of the day, it's part of your soul, but it's your divine spark. So Orisha is Oriyasher, which has a gematria value of 717. The last line, so I showed you those first 7, I showed you the first 6. The 7th line is 1, 7, 21, 35, 35, 21, 7, 1. That is Agu, 1, 7, 21. So that's leopard in Igbo. On the other side, remember that Uga we had earlier? So Uganda. Uga is time, so that's Kala. Time, Kala. In Uganda, on the Yoa cosmogram, which is the mapping of going in and out of life and the traveling of the sun. Kala is the east. East comes from word meaning origin. Kala also means fire. So remember the Eke, so the fire, it means summer. So the summer triangle, which has Vega, the Neb, all of them in it. And it means black. So Krishna says, I am become Kala, so blackness and time go hand in hand. The blackness, the leopard. So blackness that occurs over time is what we call reaction diffusion. It is the chemical steps that have to happen in order for you to have patterns on your skin. So it is running a interface program. It's writing an interface on your skin. How does it do this? 3535. 5 is the gematria of Ha in Arabic. 30 is Lam. So this word 3535 is hala hala. It is the poison that comes out when the stars are being churned to release the elixir from immortality. That poison is caught in the throat of Shiva. Shiva is Shiva, meaning good, auspicious, is the good aspect, the benevolent aspect of the flame. Remember the tongue of fire. So in other words, the poison is the poison letters, which is a nickname for Nisabiti, the writing system they use for Black Panther in the movies, and that means in the head, so in the beginning. So this is what it's referring to. They follow the full procession of the stars, and then that is how they construct the language. You do this from the mountain of the moon because it's essentially right in the middle of the planet, and it basically teaches you this language I've been talking about. What was the significance of that Oryashar 717, you may ask? Well, in line 8, 28, 56, 70, 56, 28, 8, 1. The Shango bone has 168 notches, which is the total of these 4 right here. That equals 168. The remainder, 1, 8, 70, 8, and 1, give you 88 for a total of 256, which is 8 bits. 168 is also the number of electrons in Iboga, the Fong spelling for Iboga, which is a chemical in the Bwiti ceremonies performed by the Fong, who get their name from Pangwe, which is at or on the leopard. So we talk about the spots that are on the leopard or his skin. But that Ngwe also is what gives us Igwe, meaning sky. All right. And so on the sky, on the skin, one and the same. The night sky, so spots works exactly the same. Okay, this is what they're telling you. So Pangwe. So Fong, so the Fong Bantu, that's where they get their name. So Pangwe, Fangwe. And they joined up with the pygmies there, and then they created Bwiti so you could reunite in this way. You can go see your ancestors when you take this stuff. So that's where the heart-shaped herb comes about. And this Iboga just happens to be the numbers that are down the middle of Meru Prostata. So Aleph, Bet, Vav, Kaf, Ain, which is transliterated as Eboka, Iboka. So all this is written in the very fabric of existence. Now, what is the significance of this 168 and this 88? 88 is the number of constellations, or at least constellation zones, when you divide a sphere. So the celestial sphere into 88 sections. This creates regions that have a measure of roughly 468 degrees. It's a little bit more than that. 468 degrees. 468 degrees divided by 4, because you deal with quarters when you're talking about the cosmogram. Okay. So that means each quarter is 117. 117 hertz happens to be the frequency of the king's chamber in the pyramid. Why did they tune it to 117, you may ask? Why 117? Because they're telling you a frequency is a square, is a side. So let's say one side equals a frequency. Well, if I take that and I make it 5-sided, so I take 117, I make 5 sides, I get 585. What's significant about 585? That is the exact elements of a pyramid. So that's 5 sides, 5 points, and 8 lines. So the pyramid communicates in various ways. And you can basically download a whole understanding of the pyramid through that frequency if you know what you're doing. But that's what it is. So the stairway, the ladder to heaven, that's it. You in the king's chamber, you get the resonance going or whatever. You use the techniques associated with having an out-of-body experience, which involves increasing your electrolytes through drinking a bit of salt water throughout the day, or some Gatorade and stuff like this. Once you know how to properly align the body through yoga, through Shambhavi Mahamudra, which was created for the express purpose of you being able to do this without a drug or chemical, and you will be able to exit your body. It isn't anything special about it. It is just that you are an electromagnetic being that is inhabiting a body of your creation. And, you know, we can sit down and talk about how that happens, but that's exactly the process that, by which Allah made itself. Like you basically make that, that light body first, and then it basically assembles, the plasma, the ions of space, and condenses it or whatever, cools it, whatever else, and you eventually make yourself a body. We are not this gross end product. We are the thing that wields it together, the good fire. So finally, we could talk about some of this math that's actually in here and how it is relevant to everything I just talked about. Like basically, that's the whole supreme calculus. Like everything I just explained to you, but then now I get to show it, demonstrate it. All right, so orientation, what the supreme calculus actually claims. Core claim, we live inside a holographic semantic construct, a universe where numbers, sounds, and forms are the same thing seen from different angles and dimensions. You don't necessarily live in the construct lives inside of you. The entire universe, it's like a 12-level structure with a 13th serving as the it's like the anchor for all of that or whatever. So that whole, minor 12, major 12, that whole situation, so they're actually heaven. So we're heaven one. So what heaven means actually is like atmosphere, akash. It's the substance that carries sound in the first place. And so we experience everything as frequencies. Like whatever frequency you're tuned into, that's what reality you're going to experience basically. And so we got 12 different densities, and then one that anchors all 12 of them. It's pretty much on. But you experience this as a mapping of a 4-dimensional space. And so in your brain and the way that the universe is actually, they say that it's shaped, according to Stephen Hawking and all them, it's one of those donuts, just like you are when you first born. That donut. Let's see. Wireframe. Knows it flows into itself and out. In the center of your brain, you pretty much got a mechanism that is mapping space just like that. Let's get some swirls going around here. Let me see you, squirrel. Do like that. And then we get some of that action going back the other direction. Let me see, make sure I do that right. I mean, it's good enough for you to start kind of seeing. You see how this is like forming hexagons right there? So it forms whole hexagons. So these hexagons are what your brain, the hippocampus, and the entorhinal cells use to map space, because it is essentially a flat projection of a cube made of 3 rhombuses, so rhombi. So flatten the cube, and it maps that onto here, and then it whenever you have a repeating pattern of these right here, you basically have a Turing complete computational system, aka Rule 110. So it can compute anything. It sends out these little glider type things or whatever. It's a whole video that I did. I did part on that a couple videos ago, so you can look back at what that is. Your body Meru Prostara, when you turn into binary, turn all the even numbers into 0, and then all the ones are ones, of course, all the odd numbers are 1. You get that, you get a fractal, one of these type of situations right here. It goes on and on forever. That's the leopard spots. And then that is Rule 90. Alright, so that is how it maps space, like by using local rules, so it is a substance, and then we get the illusion of forward progression through time and space, because we can't perceive time in 3D. We see it as slices of 3D, so animation is what we experience that as. So there's the construct. So this is happening inside your head. Your entire experience is happening in there based on how electrical signals are being mapped. You have an entire map of the universe inside of your head already. That's why the Bible starts off in better sheets in the head in the beginning. All right. We're just nested like Russian dolls inside one mind, and then inside of our mind we create another universe, and inside of that universe another universe created, and we just keep on going forever. Chukwu, supreme chi, the unspoken totality, the one. So that's Allah. That's just their word for Allah. It means chi, uku, the supreme chi. So your spark is the chi, the supreme chi is the connected, the oneness, the original. So it's Allah. To know himself, that totality has to name itself, to vibrate, the vibration. And then I don't even think I really knew the NOI story in detail before doing this, but it sounds a whole lot like it. And that was achieved through calculus. Himself, that totality has to name itself, to vibrate, the vibration crystallizes. So whenever something is repeating, even if it is a sequence, if it is a sequence that can fold back onto itself, has the right ECA rules in order to do so, that is considered a crystal behavior. And if you add 90 and 110, you get 200. So rule 200. Oh, is it 110? That's the crystal. Which one's the crystal? It might be 110. That's already a crystal. It's one of the two. I think 200 is the barrier for this. So it's like, so this is the one that keeps this thing from going on forever. Like it actually gives it some stability, if you will. Like a head, because 200 is resh, so it's like a head or origin, the beginning. If you're infinite, you can't start, you can't have a temporal experience unless you designate a beginning. Okay, so which maps to letters, phonemes, which maps to geometric, so semantics, so the same part of your brain that maps space and time, it is mapping semantics, it's mapping meaning. So there's a logic to it, a logos to that is all within you. Maps to rituals and behavior. So all that stuff develops. So it's a linear progression right there. So alpha values, those are binary codes. So each of the alpha keys is a 4-bit code, and they come together with another one to form an 8-bit. Remember, 256 items. That maps to letters and phonemes. I showed you that translation, which map to geometry. So there's certain shapes that come out of it. Hold on, y'all tripping. Those shapes map to rituals, so they actually build altars and structures based on those geometry, so you can have those resonances, just like how I showed you how 117 hertz is in the king's chamber, because it is 1/5 of the dimensions of a pyramid. If you look at that as a dimensionalist constant. Okay, and then so the supreme calculus is the math backbone that shows these correspondences are not just poetic, but structurally consistent. A given ratio, a given sound gives way to a given sound. A given sound gives way to a given type of form, and then a given type of form gives way to a given type of consciousness. So when you say ka ba ak, so the ka ba is the combination of the ka and the ba. I showed you what the ak is. The ak is the light body. So this is the knowledge and the wisdom coming together to make the understanding. Understanding is a mental picture that is drawn from knowledge and wisdom to see things for what they are and not what they seem to be. In other words, if you have not connected the knowledge and the wisdom, the ka and the ba, the chi that is consulting with your divine spark. Ba is the acting power in order to do that, the application. If you haven't gone through the initiation or whatever, those two things can not combine the way they do, because you're dealing with quantum information that needs to latch on to the proper symbols and shapes and stuff that you've trained yourself with in initiation. Once you have that, you have a scaffolding in order to be able to explore the other parts of your consciousness and existence in general. And you can pull from the alam al-mithal is the Arabic word for the construct of wherever we end up going whenever we do out-of-body experiences. Or whatever. Well documented is objective information that is presented to you based on what information is available to you. So you have to educate yourself, especially when it comes to language and symbols, so that your brain has something to use when it's trying to explain these higher dimensional signals that it is reading and interpreting. Otherwise, you'll get crazy signals and you'll get crazy symbolism that does nothing but scare you and confuse you more. All right, so this is not some magic stuff. It is scientific. It is tested. I've personally done it several times at this point. It's like riding a bike. I don't do it that often at this point. I just want to see if I can keep doing it. But anytime you say ka ba ak or arm, leg, arm, head, you're not just naming an idea. You're calling a specific configuration of the construct, like selecting a state in a quantum system. The semantic construct, how language is physics. 1.1, spelling as invocation. Calculation as crystallization. Letters and numbers are memes, equals spirit. Spirit comes from breath. So individual breaths. Breath, existence, fall or descent. That's what the Ruach does. So the breath of God is the Ruach. Or Rook. It isn't breath like how you're breathing right now. It is kind of like the pranayama. It is the body that the subtle body, if you will, that you use in order to traverse through this space. It is the animating principle. This is what is actually moving the body. That's what you're using to move the body. A meme isn't just some joke on Facebook. It is something that's repeatable. It is a repeated transmission of thought. Is a unit of thought. That's a good way to put it. Meme is a unit of thought that can transmit itself from one brain to another rather rapidly. Reproduces in a way that sort of resembles biological reproduction. Like it just spreads like a virus almost. And plasma also does that. So the fact that you have to use ionic activity in the brain, chemical activity in the brain in order to be able to have thoughts in the first place, that's essentially what a meme is. Essentially spirits. So spirits are these perturbations or particular arrangements of those ions and things. In fact, there's a good chance that jinn are actually plasma beings. So smokeless fire, that is like fire is a plasma, lightning is a plasma. That's essentially what they are. But you got your own personal jinn and you got your own personal angel. But what that's really describing is the thing that allows you to move the body, and the thing that pretty much keeps you aligned with the quantum information of your soul. All right, so when you're spelling, you're invoking a spirit through a sound pattern. Calculation, that's putting that spirit into stone, a stable form. So by trapping those words, so aligning words with math, it's like binding that spirit to stone. So that's what the Akwanshi monoliths in Igbo Ukwu, that's what they actually are. They're the way that you lock word in with math through geometry. So those markings and stuff that you see on those monoliths are derived from math, Adinkra codes, if you will. That's why those came out and are very well. That's why they're very much associated with Ghana. Or whatever, these different symbols. This guy right here, meaning to bind handcuffs or whatever. That is exactly what you get when you project from 4 dimensions on down. All right, it's the bind. That's the yoga. All right, calculation, putting that spirit into stone, a stable form. Rounding is metaphysical. Rounding up inflates a mean. That's Luciferic luxury, making the physical more spiritual than it actually is. So that's pumping something up. So to say you're rounding up, all right. So I'm doing. So I got 5. It is an infinitely long number. If I keep going on and on forever, I just get confused. So we got to truncate this thing. If I round it, I can round in any number of places. I can round this. Let me see what would cause me to round up. If I cut it here, I can round this up and it will become 1.62, right? Does that have any value to me? Not immediately. Adding extra digits beyond the semantic core is like turning a clean square truth into a cipher again. Idolatry, worshiping the object instead of the pattern it channels, and redundancy, causing confusion through multiple equations pointing to the same function. So whereas a lot of answers can solve an equation, there are only a handful that actually create stable geometries, and that's where Adinkra code supersymmetry came from. All right, so too many letters. If I can't figure out a semantic association with the alphanumerics of this, that's just too many digits. It's not really helping me out to remember all those digits, except to show off. The sweet spot is to keep the word length of the number that actually encodes a term. So as you can see, Afa. So I can remember 5 by Afa. I understand what Afa is, or whatever, by me plugging it into known equations, by plugging it into stable structures in the form of an actual physical equation that have an application. Any semantic that I attach to it is going to function a lot more stably. It's going to be something that's easier to remember. And if the word actually describes what the thing is doing, that makes it a lot easier. So we got Afa. Ocha. So Ocha means Orisha. So remember I was telling you about Oriyasha and the direct light, your personal head. So that comes from the Alpha and the Ofa, the resistance and the current and the voltage. So the current that comes from that. So the thing that's actually discharged and actually moves and actually has personality and experience is the Ocha. All right, and the more important thing about that is Alpha comes from Igbo, Ofa comes from Yoruba, and then the two come together to have a current that happens to be an American. So this is from the Caribbean and the Americas. This is what they call that same system. So for whatever reason, anytime they got these two sides that came back together, and then you get a Native American, you get people who live in America. That's us. That's our system. You got the Ak, so the Ak is encoded in there too. So if I take that middle Ground member, the midpoint between the alpha and alpha. If I expand it out to 4 digits, I get Ak, so it's your light body. If I, so 2118, so that is derived from, that has to do with the, so 5 squared is 2.618, so it has to do with that and the 0.5 midpoint between those two, since there's a distance of 1 between find its inverse alpha and alpha, because it's 0.5 in between it, whatever. That's kind of like a midpoint on the line. That gives you so it has to do with, it can mean origin, but it also means, I forget what it means in Chaldean and all that stuff that they spoke. Well, it pretty much means light. It is very much associated with light. Anything beyond that is the shadow memorial of a number, not the word itself. It's the shadow spirit. It's the shade of it. It's not the out front thing. Specifying the semantic is akin to wave collapse into a specific quantum state or form, so it's becoming specific. Taking form and visibility. That is what fire Agni is all about. It's about form and visibility. Not yet tangibility per se, but visibility. 1.2, the alphabet. Closure spells and safe speech. First humans got alpha plus alphabet as closure spells. So remember, so we get an alphabet that is both geometric and alpha numerically encoded, and it is safe because you can reconstruct it. They can do whatever they want to it, and you can still figure out, you can work your way back using the math. So that is what the supreme alphabet and supreme math are, is subjecting semantics to mathematical constraints, and that perform specific operations and behaviors over time, hence a calculus. So the calculus is a combination of those things to be able to identify predictable behaviors within that structure. If every vibration instantly created, speech would be dangerous. So you don't want what you're saying to automatically happen. They'll be jacked up. So that one-to-one correspondence is essentially cymatics. If a specific sound produces a specific frequency that produces a specific shape. So sound produces specific frequency, produces specific shape. That shape and that sound are forever bound or whatever. So you can build architecture having to do with that, and it's going to have a specific effect. And it's going to respond when you make that same sound. It's going to start shaking like you're calling this name and it's answering. So that is at the core of actual speaking things into existence, if you know that to a complex degree. Let's see. So meanings are thrown or flattened a few steps away from the raw math to create a buffer. Speech can circulate without constantly collapsing into manifestation until criticality invokes power laws. So until a certain, it's basically designed to where until a certain level of concentration and intensity surround that word, it doesn't manifest anything. If you get a lot of people saying that same thing repeatedly for long enough, it starts to manifest something. It has enough vibration to justify transforming the atmospheric ions into solid states. Let's see. Secret societies equal groups who still know how to line the numbers, letters, and forms back up so the words do act directly on the construct. So those people who actually know the stuff I'm telling you, for better or for worse. Some that use it for good, some that use it for bad, but it all balances out in the end. Removing direct-handedness, intonation, allows for concealment of inherent resonance. Geometry functions as a mimetic immune system. So if it doesn't have to have a specific direction or any of that stuff like that, it kind of allows you to conceal the order, the grammar, if you will. So the grammar is your grimoire, it's what holds your spells. If it's like specific like that, then you know it's not going. It's only going to activate for some people. But if you have something that has complete closure, and it can be approached from any angle, then everybody has access to it. This is why Nisibiti, Ogam, Hebrew, Arabic, and Devanagari, etc. can all be read as different interfaces to the same numeric backbone. So when I took those letters, which are typically, you know, like by themselves, separate, they don't have specific orientation or none of that like that. Like I said, when I took those and I put them together, they started looking like a man in a house. Once I subjected them to constraints having to do with geometry, they started to take form, and then eventually I got a coherent figure with recognizable figures. So that's what it is. So that's the supreme calculus. That's what allows you to do that, to change how to take the letters through steps in order to be able to see and visually confirm. You see the vulture here. You see the vulture. You see her. You've seen the moving top. You see a little bird feet. You see the vulture. I use letter A's to make it. The letter A, the lower left, lowercase of left means vulture in Egyptian. So that's the proof start to finish. You use a little pyramid in order to 3D animate it. It makes a little 3D elk man. But then, as I mentioned at the beginning of the series, if you flip the pyramid up, right side up the way it's supposed to be, it will instead make a vulture. So that's why it's called the descending or falling vulture. Not because it's like a fallen angel or some bullshit like that. It's Vega. If you look in the Black Panther comics, the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, they're saying that T'Challa, he sent a expedition into space in the direction of the star Vega because he believed that's where vibranium came from. So they already know this stuff, and they've been trying to encode it secretly into the work. But that's more than enough to chew on right there, y'all. I'm gonna let y'all go. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button. Peace.